Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some ProRevenge. Our first story today comes to us from Butterfly Chunks. I secretly trained my roommate to not respond to his morning alarms. Let's jump right in. I was in college, a senior. My roommate was a sophomore, but it was his first time living in a dorm. He'd been a pretty lousy roommate. Constantly left the room a mess, left his stuff on my side of the room and on my bed, stole my alcohol, used my crap without permission, never cleaned up my dishes after he used them, and a bunch of other stuff. I confronted him about all these issues on several occasions and got the resident advisor involved with the alcohol stealing issue because at the time he was under 21. Things still continued anyways. He asks me once if it was okay if his girl spent the night, which I said no. We were in the middle of a pandemic, plus that's especially weird if I was there. I also had to wake up every day at 8 for work, which he knew, and he would stay up until 2 a.m. playing video games some nights. Not to mention, he would set like 10 alarms in the morning with a bunch of different alarm tones. I hit a breaking point and decided to do something cruel. Every morning when I woke up, I'd observe his alarm pattern and how he'd respond. He had several alarms that he'd ignore, all with the same sound. He had a couple of half-hour alarms that had a unique sound also ignored. And then, the final alarm had its own sound too. All of them were default iPhone sounds. So his brain had been trained to this alarm pattern for a while, I'd assumed. So I started step 1 of the punishment. Set up a sequence of alarms on my phone identical to his sequence, but an hour early. He responded to my alarms the exact same way he'd respond to his own. I kept this up for a week, and his brain was eventually retrained to sleep through double the amount of alarms as before. Then, phase 2 kicked in, random inconsistencies in my alarm pattern. Some days I'd play all the alarms, while other days I'd only play one that his brain was trained to ignore. That way, his brain expects to sleep through like 20 alarms and only ever hears 11. He slept through his alarm at least 4 times in 2 weeks. Eventually, he finally changed his alarm pattern so he'd only have 1 alarm and he no longer had the energy to stay up until 2 a.m. I can completely understand somebody who has an alarm set and then they hit the snooze button when it goes off because they don't want to get up right away. But do people actually set that many alarms to get up in the morning? I mean, if you have that much trouble getting your lazy butt out of bed, I think you should probably talk to somebody about that. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from ThatBend1601. My wife cheated and lost. Let's jump right in. Gonna preface this by stating that this happened 3 years ago. This isn't a throwaway account, but fake names will be used. Let's start with the frame of this story. I, 27 male, grew up like most guys under the assumption that the one is out there. That if you play your cards right, your soulmate will magically appear and you'll ride off in the sunset. When I was 19, I met a woman. Let's call her Bree. I met Bree through mutual friends while I was in the army. Bree was cute, quirky, seemed like an overall good girl. Her friend, let's call her Sam, thought it would be a great idea to get us together as a couple. Not sure what her reasons were, but I was into her and she was into me. Bree was up for a few days visiting Sam, and I had just gotten back from leave in my home state, so the meetup was inevitable. We all had lunch. Myself, Bree, Sam, and Sam's husband, let's call him Jim. This meetup was nothing spectacular, but after Bree had flown home, she messaged me on Facebook and we hit it off. After roughly 3 weeks of talking to Bree, she hit me with a very strange question. If I was pregnant, what would you do? Now, before I get to my answer, let's do the math here. She was in her party years and slept around frequently. I found that out way later in the relationship. She had a boyfriend a month before meeting me. I was adopted, so accepting a kid as my own seemed like a no-brainer. My answer was what seemed like the right thing. I will love that child as if it were my own. Well, turns out she was showing a lot of signs of pregnancy. A week later, she took the test and was positive. I stood by my word, I'll take care of this kid. There was a 3-month gap between this revelation and when she decided to fly out to me. During this gap, she was very flaky, trying to see if she could get who she thought was the dad to commit to help her take care of the kid. He never budged. She chose me instead. Yes, I understand now why staying with her was a bad idea. I was dumb, in love, and I believed she was the one, and that she'd come around eventually. I married her so that the army would cover the birth and the rest should have been history, but we all know it wasn't. Year 2. 2 years in, I noticed something a bit strange. Some guy, we'll call him Ron, was liking every post she put out and commenting on every photo that had the daughter in it. This seems odd. At this point in our marriage, I had gotten out of the military and was working a job in security. One night while working, my lizard brain connected the dots and the gut feeling followed. Now, I'm not one to act on just suspicion, I need proof. Given that I was working a nightclub that night, I would get off at 4 o'clock in the morning. She'll be asleep. She leaves her laptop on the living room couch downstairs every night before bed. The plan is coming together. I get home, head to the couch, the laptop is there. I open it and take 2 guesses at the password. It's the birth year of our daughter. I go to her Facebook, I look in messages. There it is, 6 months of conversations with a guy named Ron. Some of the conversation is flirty, some is banter about how useless and less of a man I am. The worst part though was the revelation that this guy is who she feels is the biological father, and she is trying to get him involved. I scroll and scroll until I can't stomach it anymore. I grab the laptop, take it upstairs, and set it on her with the screen shining in her face. As she slowly wakes up, I say, "We're talking about this in the morning," and walk back downstairs. She normally wakes up at 7 but didn't come down until 9, probably hoping I would be asleep on the couch. She begins by saying it was only friendly talk and not technically cheating. I called BS and told her that if I see this again, I'm gone. Now, I said if, but I knew better. It would be when. This is when I set my plan in motion. I dropped out of college to get a job in my field and made sure anything that was opened up under credit was under her name. I began stating that back where I'm from has a better economy and that we'd be better off there. It took 2 years of convincing, but it worked. Nothing was under my name, and we were set to go to my hometown in 6 months. We got there in May, and I sent her home to visit the next month. I knew what she would do and who she would do it with. There was a guy we met through Sam the day before we left, and I knew immediately that she was interested in him. 3 weeks after going to visit, she started acting strange again, prioritizing other things over me, putting things off, and becoming distant. Now, I spent 2 years setting the dominoes up. I just let her knock them over. I made sure I was jobless, had nothing to my name, and was home where I could fall back on family. I pressured her into admitting that she cheated, and the dominoes tumbled. I cut all funds that were being sent to the account, drained the account to file for divorce. I had nothing, so she couldn't take half. I had no job, so what lifestyle did we have that would require giving her alimony? Everything was in her name, so even though I had financial responsibility over some of those bills, the divorce lasted long enough to destroy her credit. I gave her everything and sacrificed much to raise her child, but in the end, she lost the most. I am now extremely successful and valued in my career. I'm not interested in marriage, but I have no shortage of women in my life. Life is good. I still have contact with the daughter, and Bree often flirts with me trying to get me back. I'm the only dad the kid has known and have no intentions of becoming an ex-dad. Even though getting back with her is emotionally tempting, to be with the kid more, I know better and I have better options. Now, I'm not a military person, so this kind of surprised me, but there were comments down below that stated that people generally get married pretty young in the military because there's a bit of an incentive for it. The single guys are all stuck in the barracks and have really crappy living conditions, while the married ones get to live off post in nice apartments and homes. OP also mentioned down below that the child is his regardless of the genetics, and he's been paying for a lot of things. Clothes, shoes, beds, games, toys, hobbies. He pays for it all. That gains a lot of respect in my eyes. Our next story today comes to us from Icon of Icons. Throw a book at my head, we'll see who has the last laugh. Let's jump right in. So this happens back in freshman year of high school for me, about 20 years ago. Little bit of a backstory, I was born with neurofibromatosis, a genetic condition that causes tumor growth on nerve endings, and a large list of other problems like early onset puberty, blindness, epilepsy, death, etc. I had this teacher who, if you called her an ancient old hag, you'd be being polite. For whatever reason, she had it out for me. I can only pin it down to her being a bully. Now, I had been sick because of my medical condition and had action plans with the school as to not fall behind. The teacher knew of my condition because of this. So one day I come into the classroom and there's a depiction of me on the whiteboard with the words "Tumor Boy" above it. The teacher just shrugged and laughed. She had disclosed my medical condition to the entire class. I tell the principal, nothing. The guidance counselor, nothing. My parents, nothing. Nobody believes me. It's my word against hers. So for now, I let it go. I'm very patient, so I know I'll get another opportunity. Another incident, she hits my hand with a ruler when I ask her to stop taunting me in front of the other students. My medical condition is nobody's business but my own. She tells the class I have brain tumors, which is why my head is so large. She also points out that I have them in my feet, again, disclosing private medical information just to be a vile person. I again go through everyone. Again, nobody believes me. So then I get a mild case of the flu and miss about a week of school, so I can ask to bring in a recorder to school to tape lessons to catch up. It's immediately put in my file, and for whatever reason, she missed this meeting. Still, it's in my file, so she should know about the agreement. So now I know if she acts like a rancid bee again, her butt is mine. All I need is bait, which pretty much just takes me showing up. The very next day at school, I'm sitting in class with the recorder taping in my bag, and she starts with her daily routine of asking someone to draw a picture of me and all my tumors on the whiteboard. I again ask her to stop, and this is where the book is thrown at my head with a loud thud, followed by a profanity-filled tirade about how terrible of a child I am. It's at this point I stop the recorder and tell her exactly what I think of her, and am then physically removed from the class and taken to the principal's office, and I'm expelled. Once I got home is when I showed my parents the tape. Within 20 minutes, we are back at the school playing it for the principal and vice principal, threatening legal action. Needless to say, my expulsion is lifted and she is fired on the spot just before retirement, losing her retirement money. She even called me after and asked, "Why are you doing this?" I simply told her she did it to herself and hung up. So we already know that the teacher was a giant butthole, but I guess she didn't have any common sense either. Because if you're that close to retirement, you'd think you'd want to be protecting that pension of yours. If you're that vile of a person though, you deserve to live the rest of your life poor. Good luck. Our last story today comes to us from Wat Kenobi. Changing a big fat target on my back to my boss being escorted out by security. Let's jump right in. This happened a few years ago, but the story appears to be a good match for this sub. I was one of two commercial writers and producers working in the production department of a local television station. Our department was responsible for producing both the newscasts and commercials for clients who purchased airtime on our station. The department is high stress. I had to manage multiple deadlines and provide creatives for about a dozen ad campaigns every month. That being said, I always met my deadlines, and our sales department was always complimentary of my work, steering the more important clients my way. Unfortunately, managers in my department came and went with unsettling frequency. In the 9 years I was there, I had 6 different managers. Most often, the managers were passing through with their sights set on snagging upper-level management jobs in larger television markets. This meant their experience actually doing the work of television production was often minimal, so they had a tendency to not interfere with our work so long as clients were happy and deadlines were being met. Given the managers were so disengaged, I told our general sales manager about my idea for saving time and money in the department, and he suggested I apply for the production manager position the next time it opened up. So I did. I did not get the job. I was told I was too important maintaining good client relationships through my work as a producer. No big deal, I thought. I was happy as a producer. Unfortunately, the person they did hire for the position ended up being a monumental butthole of the first order. I'll call him Bob. The first thing Bob wanted to know was who in the department had applied for the position he now filled. I don't know what idiot in upper management thought it would be a good idea to tell him, but someone did. It soon became apparent he wanted to find any excuse he could to fire me because that was just the kind of insecure idiot he was. It began by him writing me about the time I was taking to complete commercial productions. Then he accused me of undercharging my clients in billing. He wanted me to wear a suit and tie, which he knew I hated. As the writing on the wall became clear, I began documenting every single interaction with him, taking notes about what was said and contradicting his accusations with facts. All the while, he is managing to piss a whole lot of people off in our department, and morale really began to tank. Bob was petty, vain, and given to things like announcing how lavish and wonderful a vacation he was planning would be. He was going to Aruba, so he'd put up travel posters and printed out a ridiculous sign he taped to his office door that would say something like, "My island adventure begins in 2 weeks." All this served to remind us that he was the only one in our department who made enough money to take that kind of vacation. Eventually, an incident occurred where I missed a deadline through no fault of my own. The client wanted to change up the creatives at the last minute, and we had to bump the film shoot. Somehow, Bob got it in his head that I should have been a mind reader and anticipated the client's wishes before they were communicated. He calls me into his office and begins berating and threatening me. I had had enough. I'm the kind of person who will take a lot of crap with patience and grace. But when I am finally pushed to my boiling point, I effing explode. I start yelling back, "You're an effing liar, and if you think I don't know how to handle this client, then fine. Let me see you effing do it, because I'm out of here." And I walked off the job. I'm so amped up by what just transpired after leaving the office, I walk all the way home, a distance of more than 6 miles. Just as I am nearing my house, my cell phone rings. It's Bob. Evidently, it just dawned on him that he would, in fact, have to produce the ad campaign himself, because our other producer had the week off. He hemmed and hawed, and finally blurted out something that was quite revealing. "If we lose this client, we'll both get fired, and I can't afford to lose another job." Really? So you've been fired from all your other jobs? What a surprise. I tell him to go F himself, because I'm not taking his crap for one more minute. All the while, I'm literally trembling with the knowledge I've walked off the job without another job to go to, and I have a wife and 2 kids to support. Thankfully, the next call I get is from the general sales manager. You know, the guy who recommended I apply for Bob's job, resulting in this whole crap storm. By now, news of my blow-up evidently made it back to him. He asks me about what happened, and I fill him in and apologize for walking off the job, while also telling him there's no way I'm working for Bob. He says, "Yep, leaving work wasn't a good idea, so do me a favor and come back. Email me the details of what happened and I'll see what I can do." Thanks to my copious note-taking of all my interactions with Bob, it takes me no time at all to send him the complete history of Bob's boobery. So I return hoping to avoid Bob. Thankfully, his door was closed, and I keep my head down in my cubicle. A half hour before quitting time, I notice our general manager and a security guard getting off the elevator together. I stand up to see where they are headed and am elated to see it's directly toward Bob's office. What transpires is even better than the revenge options I was contemplating. Bob emerges from his office carrying a box of his belongings, including the rolled up Aruba travel poster, and is escorted by the security guard to the escalator. Now standing up in my cubicle, he turns toward me, his face beet red with embarrassment. As our eyes meet, I flash an ear-to-ear grin. The dipshit is done. This makes you really wonder about when Bob got hired. Did the people doing the hiring not look into his previous work at all? Call any references or previous employers? Apparently not. That calls into question just how good this company is. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.